Welcome to Third Eyesight. Do you see spirits? Do you hear things? Do you want to talk about it? I'm your host, Juan, and I'm sharing with you my experiences with spirit, as well as interviewing folks who feel comfortable sharing their experiences with spirit. Let's get to it. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode number 5 of Third Eyesight Podcasts. It's so exciting. 5 is one of my favorite numbers. So here we go. So this week, I'm going to share stories about my experiences with my friend, Kat. But for the first time ever on Third Eyesight, I'm going to have an interview. So I'm going to have Kat on as an interviewee to tell her part of the story. I mean, it's so much better than me just telling you the two sides of the stories. You got to hear mine as well as hers, and we're going to converse about it, and you're going to hear our conversation. So it's at this point that I'm going to close out this introductory part of the podcast episode and let the interview begin. So I have Kat here with me. Kat, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm very good, thank you. And I'm so happy you're joining this podcast episode and get to share your story. But I want to first ask you, where are you based and what is your profession?
So, I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and I currently work for the public library system in Miami-Dade County. I'm a library assistant.
Cool. How long have you been a librarian for?
I've been with the library system for about 5 years now.
Cool. Okay. Great. And just so that folks know, I grew up in Miami and I went to high school with Kat, and we were connected during college, and we lost some connection, and we recently reconnected in the last year, largely because of what we're going to talk about in this episode, but also just like we started connecting over our love for mysticism and crystals and intuition. So I'm just so happy to be reconnected with Kat. We're going to go ahead and get into the experience that we had together. So this experience is about Mikey, who is your partner. And if you feel comfortable, could you provide some background to us about like who Mikey was, your relationship to him, and what he was like?
So, Mikey was many things for me. He was my best friend, my boyfriend, my fiance, my partner, the love of my life, my husband. And we had actually met on an online dating site called OkCupid. And from the moment he first talked to me, I knew there was something different about him. And I don't know how to explain it, but just internally, I knew it was going to work out with him, and the rest is history. And he was your kind of smartass, sarcastic, mouthy, snarky kind of person. But he did have very deep down, once you really knew him very well, he did have a very good heart, a heart of gold, and was just a very kind, gentle, amazing person. And he simply was amazing, and I miss him every day.
Thank you for sharing that. And he sounds like a fun person to be around. And I know that the the crux of why we are talking this episode today is largely related to how he passed. Do you feel comfortable sharing how he passed and when he passed?
Certainly. So him and I and my family as well, we all got sick from COVID last year around the beginning of July. And he died on July 18th of 2020, around 11:45 at night. And he died in his sleep. And the main thing was that he was having issues breathing, but it was too late at that point to really do anything to try to call for help. And he passed away in his sleep.
And thank you for being open to sharing that. And I asked that question to you, Kat, because I feel it's important people know that, as long as you feel comfortable. Could you actually go into a little bit of like how that experience of losing Mikey in the physical world, how that's changed or impacted you since then?
Well, for me, pretty much, it literally broke my spirit, broke the world around me. Probably for that first month or so, I was a complete zombie. Nothing in life mattered. The world was black and white. Everything was like too loud, too bright. Everyone was too happy. It just was just too much. And as it is natural, but unfortunately, I was suicidal during that time where I'm like, if I get hit by a bus today, cool. At least I get to see him again. It was thoughts like that. And it took me a long time to get myself out of the dark place. And it was just not a fun time. But I was still home from work because I still had to go get negative COVID tests. So I've been sick for about 2 weeks. I still had an extra 4 weeks at home to breathe. And in many ways that helped me for that initial shock and everything. But then once I started going back to work, I did start going to therapy. That really did help slowly pull me out of the dark place.
It's not an easy thing to share. And I just so appreciate you being so open to being vulnerable about that. And I know that by you sharing that, I'm sure there's someone out there who can relate because maybe they've lost someone in the last year.
Agreed, yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and skip to a call that we had, a video call, to a FaceTime call we had specifically, I think 2 months ago. We just wanted to catch up and see like what's going on. And I had shared with you, I think in that call or prior to that call, that I was starting to discover mediumship abilities that I may have. And I want to ask you, like, what did you think when I first started sharing with you, like I may have mediumship abilities?
I mean, honestly, I was like, okay, that's actually really cool. In a way, I kind of would like to have that gift, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm the kind of person that could handle all of the spiritual world like coming at me like, oh, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. And I'm like, wait, no, I don't know if I could handle that. I don't know if I'm the kind of person that can handle that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. because it doesn't necessarily happen to me where like it's not like I'm in a grocery store like the Long Island medium. I just go up to people like, I'm a medium, I don't just do that. Like, but it's like not like they just come to me like a Disney line. But I think that the anxieties I grew up with may be related. Now I'm realizing they may be related to like what these abilities may be. So in that call that we had that night, that FaceTime call, I told you about those abilities that I was exploring. And I remember telling you, like, I wish I could channel someone like Mikey for you, like at the moment, like almost like conjure is not the right word, but like on demand, like a, hey, Mikey, come through and say a message. And I told you in that moment, I said, I don't think I can do that. And I don't know, I don't ever want to promise that to you or to anybody. And you understood. And then I made a face at you and I told you, he's here. And I made this really weird face, and people can't see my face because they're listening to the podcast, but I made a very like, oh, face, like this is not supposed to happen. And not that I was unwelcoming towards it. It was just like, whoa, I feel different. And I may have described this in last week's podcast episode, but when I feel spirit, I feel like what I tend to feel, either I will see something in my head that is not my own thought that comes out of nowhere, or I will feel like someone is putting a weighted blanket on my shoulders and on my back. And that's what I was feeling, is the weighted blanket feeling on my back when I felt Mikey coming through. And I told you, like, he's here. And I think the first thing I told you, and I even said, like, you don't need someone like me to tell you this. You don't need a medium to tell you this, but he just wants me to tell you how much he loves you and supports you and is always around you. And then I mentioned, I told you that I saw an image of a bird in flight. And I asked you if you related to that symbol in any way. And do you remember like what your reaction was when I said a bird?
Yes, I do. At first I thought, what? A bird? Okay. That's not the symbol I was expecting. Okay. I thought he was going to give me a cat, which he knew I love cats, but a bird, I'm like, yeah, nope, doesn't resonate. I don't know what that means. Okay.
Yeah, it just didn't click. And I remember thinking at the moment, I'm like, okay, I saw a bird in my like mind's eye, and it's not relating. So, and I think I told you, well, if it's not relating to you, then maybe be on the lookout for birds. And I put
Mhm.
it to the side, and a part of me does feel like, oh, I didn't get that right, or I got something wrong there. Whatever, put it to the side. I'm gonna have to move on from it. But can you share with our listeners what happened right after the video call when you texted me?
So after our video call, I think I had to get ready for bed because I had work the next day. And I'm laying in my bed. I'm trying to, wind down, go to sleep. And then my mind's just kind of wandering, free thought, nothing specific. And then all of a sudden, this thought popped in my head. I'm like, wait a minute. He had a bird when he was a teenager because he inherited, I believe it was his mother's bird when she passed. And it was one of those, I think like those like little parakeet type birds.
Hmm.
And her name was Rosie. And she pretty much bonded to him and him only. She didn't like anyone else but him. So I was like, oh, I got to one. So of course I texted you about that. And I thought, okay, maybe that's what he meant.
Yeah, and it's funny because now I'm thinking, well, is Rosie since passed on?
I believe so. It's been a long time.
I'm wondering. I mean, if it's been a
Yeah,
long
I'm,
time,
I'm pretty sure she is, but yeah.
because maybe now that I'm thinking, maybe he was saying, "I'm with Rosie. I got the bird. She's here," which is
Probably.
lovely. I'm sure they're together. I'm sure
Yeah.
they're together, and Rosie is sticking just with him and his grandma over on the other side. Um,
Yeah.
and I remember telling you, like, well, maybe this was Mikey's way of like showing me a bird, and you like that reminding you after the fact of his pet bird that was so like stuck with him, like his be
Mhm.
all end all, or he was her be all end all, the bird. Um, the fact that it reminds you of that to me made me feel like, okay, maybe he brought a bird to let you know, like, this is real, this is me, like almost like this is their evidence, this is me, because I'm mentioning a bird to you, and about my pet bird that loved me so much. But can you then now explain, or can you go into now, what happened the next morning in the car?
So the next morning, I was on my way to work and I'm driving down. For those of you that live in Miami, I'm sure you're familiar with 144th, not too far from US 1, and it drives through a residential neighborhood. And this is the way I go to work in the mornings because it takes me to 97th Avenue. My job is on 97th Avenue. So I'm driving down 144th Street. And there was a song that had come on. And I remember this song being played every once in a while when I was in the car with Michael when he was still alive. And it was called Someone You I think it's Someone You Loved by Louis Capaldi. And the song is playing in the car, reminded me of him. And this is something that I'll never forget. I was driving in the car. I would have to make a right turn in like in a couple of feet. And as I'm driving, I'm looking in the rearview mirror behind me. I kid you not, there were these huge, and I'm talking huge white birds just mid-flight with their wings spread out in a very straight V formation. They're not like that close to my car, but I can see them in the background behind me. And of course, I'm driving and I'm trying to look and drive at the same time, but I was like, what? While the song is playing, and it was there for a second, I'm driving and I'm at the turning point to, make a right turn at this four-way stop. I look back in the rear view mirror and they're gone. It was like a split second thing, but I can still see it in my mind very clearly that it was there. And it just brought the biggest like smile on my face, and it just made me feel very warm inside. And I was like, you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, you're making me think now, because I've driven down 144th when I lived in Miami. Were you in the part of 144th, like east of US 1, where it's like Palmetto Bay covered in trees? or were you on the other side where there's barely any trees on 144? Because I feel like is in that area, are there like trees lining the road?
There might be some, I haven't really noticed before, but there's plenty of residential houses. And it's a beautiful area. This is like on like the nicer side of,
Mhm.
houses and, wealth and such.
Right. Yeah. Because I was wondering if like with these birds that you saw, like I was wondering if like with if it was a road with a lot of trees lining it, it'd be funny to see birds. Like how close, like if you were to approximate how high off the ground or how
Oh,
close from the top of your car.
I couldn't tell you that. All that happened in just a split second. It wasn't
Right.
enough for me to tell you, oh, they were like this many feet away from the car. No, I couldn't tell you
Okay.
that.
No,
It,
that's
it
totally
happened.
fair.
It happened that fast,
Hmm.
and part of me is still like, did that actually happen? But it's like, yes, of course it happened.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. I mean, also because you were driving, and it's very. If that makes me feel like you're a very safe driver, that the fact that you can't approximate tells me you're a very attentive driver, and we're paying attention to the roads. So that's a good thing. Being and I remember that morning I got your audio note because you even told me, listen, I'm sending this audio note because I can't text all of this, and then you described to me what happened, and I was just like, like this is so cool, and I yeah.
Like it was all so much that happened. That I'm like, okay, there's no way my hands can type as fast as my brain is thinking right now. I even my mouth couldn't catch up with all the thoughts in my brain. I'm like, bleh, I gotta tell him.
Yeah, no, I'm so grateful you told me that. And as I'm learning to tap into this mediumship abilities, there are times I'm like, did that really happen? Was that just a coincidence? But to me, it is just like, it's just bizarre that we had that FaceTime call like the night before 8, 9, 10 p.m. And then exactly 10, 12 hours later, you're hearing the song that you two cherished together, one of the songs we cherished together, and you see these big birds in your rearview mirror for a split second. Like that's just, I don't know. That's like that's interesting.
Yeah, it really is. Honestly, I would say more than interesting. It was indescribable, really.
Oh, I love hearing that. And actually, while we're on the topic of birds, can you share about your feather experience?
So this was the day before Halloween. It was on a Saturday, October 30th. And of course, for those of you who do not work on Saturdays, I work on Saturdays for the library. So I had to go to work. And I pull into the parking lot. And the way this parking lot is shaped, I don't understand it. It's a weirdly shaped parking lot. So usually there's these 4 parking spots. That's where some of the staff tend to park. It's because it's closest to the back office door. And I tend to usually park in like the second or third spot. And I went for the second spot because it was available. So now the way this parking lot is formatted and everything, the first spot is empty. I would have seen something on the ground as I was pulling up, but there was nothing there. So there's no way that something could be there when I got there. And it wasn't a particularly windy day. And for some reason, as I'm parking, I get my stuff, Michael just pops into my head randomly. I wasn't even thinking about him at that point. And they're like, oh, okay. I went along with it and I just started thinking about him. And I opened the car door to get out. Right there is a feather, black and white, just sitting there waiting for me.
When you told me about this story, I didn't hear it in this much detail. Like you driving into the parking lot, you seeing the spot before you popped in and what was around. Like, so that's amazing. And this happened, I think, a week or 2 weeks after our conversation about birds and me mentioning the birds. So and I actually would love to share with those listening on my Instagram. I would love to share your picture of the feather. So could I share your picture of the feather on
Oh,
Instagram?
absolutely, of course. Do you have the photo?
I don't. So I'll get it from you after our interview,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's such a beautiful feather, and it's just like I've never quite seen a feather like that laying around in nature before. Not in
That's the
Miami.
thing. That's the thing. Neither have I. The way it's colored, It is black and white, but it's like the most clean cut feather you've ever seen. Like I believe the top part is black. I wouldn't say it's halfway black. It's about 1/3 of the way black, and then the rest is white. Just very clean, very neat black and white feather. And I thought, what kind of bird feather is this? This can't be because we have a lot of ducks around our library. I'm like,
Right.
no, the ducks are not black and white. They're more like a grayish brown spotted color. Sometimes those white, I think it's called ibis birds that kind of walk around, eat the grass or whatever.
Right.
But I've never seen a feather like that before.
And for folks listening who don't like us Floridians and Miamians, we grew up with a lot of interesting birds like peacocks and like a lot of ducks. So and irises, I think that's what they're called, irises, and also
I
like
think so, yeah.
blue herons. So we're used to all kinds of birds in the tropics, but that feather is so gorgeous. Like I actually, when I saw your photo, because I think the feather is taken in front of your computer screen or something dark in the background, I didn't notice the black part of the feather. And I realized, whoa, this is a huge feather. And it's almost looks like someone dipped the feather in black ink. That's how like
Mhm.
perfect the colors are. It's so cool. So I'm going to share that photo on my Instagram.
I know this is kind of like dorky, but it's almost like a Harry Potter feather.
It is. It is. It's like you like Wingardium Leviosa. Like it's that kind of
Yes,
feather. Oh my
yes.
gosh. I'm sure I know you kept the feather. That would be like
Of
a
course, I
wonderful
keep it at my
picture.
desk at work.
Oh, I love that. That would be so cool if you like have it on your desk and you just get like a Harry Potter wand, take a picture. Wingardium Leviosa. Anyways, that's my geekiness coming out. So I want to go next to, you were so generous and so kind to offer me your time towards helping me practice my mediumship abilities. And I think we scheduled one call and I had some messages that came through. Not all of them really resonated. Like I mentioned, like black cargo shorts, which happened to resonate later for you, and like other things that didn't quite resonate. But if it's okay, I'd like to go to the next practice session we had together. And I just wanted to like thank you for helping me practice my mediumship abilities. And for those that are listening, there have been some folks in my life who have volunteered to help me practice, and Kat is one of them. And I always tell them, I may not get everything right, and they always say like, yeah, that's okay if you don't get anything right. I know you're practicing and that you're new to this. So I just want to thank you, Kat, for being one of those people that is willing to be vulnerable with me, because that's a very vulnerable spot to be in, to be the sitter for someone practicing mediumship. So thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
So 2 weeks after, I think your experience with that feather,
No, it was the next day.
it was.
Yes.
Oh, I don't even remember. Wow, 1 day to 2 weeks. So okay, then thank you, Kat. The next day, we had. Oh, that's right, because we had pre-scheduled our mediumship practice, and the feather happened the day before. That's right. So in that session, you wanted to. Usually, I don't take requests like I want to reach my grandma, and it's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to reach your grandma. We're going to see what happens. But in this case, it happened to work in our benefit. You asked about reaching your grandmother and some other family members, and I felt like we were able to channel your grandmother. And there were some things that came up, like I think I told you that I saw a yellow knitted or crocheted comforter or blanket on top of a comforter, and I saw her in like bedridden. And then the number 56 came up. I remember we were saying, when I mentioned number 56, you said it didn't resonate, didn't make any sense. And I was like, was someone born in 1956? Or like, did your grandmother get married in 1956? Like, no. And I thought, okay, let's put it aside. And then like some minutes later, 10 minutes later, you mentioned the year that your grandmother passed, 2015. And we had also talked about the year your mother was born. And then I realized, wait, your mom was 56, the year your grandmother passed. So how funny the number 56 came up, and we didn't know what it meant. Then 10 minutes later, we realized like this is the age that woman's daughter, your mom, the age she was at when her mother passed. So I want to ask you, like, what was important for you about hearing from your grandmother that night that we were talking?
It was nice to hear from her, mainly because I always wondered if she had found peace, if she was okay over there, because her life was not easy. She didn't always have the easiest life. And sometimes she wasn't always the easiest person to be around. And I won't go into details, mainly for privacy, but let's just say her and my mother did not have the best relationship. And there was a lot of tension, a lot of drama there. And naturally, when she passed, it was a very conflicted time for my mother. But I always wondered, was she okay over there? Did she ever find the peace and happiness that she truly deserved, despite being a difficult person at times?
Yeah, I totally understand those concerns. And now that I think about the number 56, to me, it's almost like her mentioning the number 56, then us realizing that's the age your mother was when her own mother passed. Um, to me, that sounds like validation, like things are water under the bridge. Like it's okay
Mhm,
between us, like I feel like that was your grandma's message indirectly for someone like your
mhm.
mom, like it's water under the bridge. And and I don't know how you feel about this, but um, I don't I personally, and I'm open to any thoughts you may have on it. I'm not sure if I believe in like a part of the afterlife where like there's punishment. I do believe there is a life review we go through when we pass. And I do feel like some people, like some souls, make the choice to get stuck in some like in between. Like I feel like that's why some places feel like paranormally haunted, like because some souls decide to get stuck or not let go of their human experience here. But I'm not sure if I believe in like any kind of like punishment. So I say that because you were mentioning that you were concerned about your grandmother being at peace after being having living the life that she lived here, that maybe she didn't have the best relationships with some people. um and to me it's like, well, no, I think we all do go to a better place. And sometimes we may decide, if we feel so stuck to this planet, to these bodies, to stick around and have some trouble with that if we decide to. But I do believe for the most part that we all go to a place of peace when we're departed.
I mean, I haven't really thought too much about like what happens when you're over there. Um, I think it depends on who you are as a person, what kind of life you had, and if you were a generally easygoing personality or at least able to overcome hardships, then you might have an easier time letting go when you're on the other side versus some people here who had a troubled life or died in a disturbing way and maybe were um, not able to process that trauma while they're alive and they're processing it while they're in spirit, while they're dead. And maybe that might explain why some people just might haunt a certain place where they died or keep coming back and are not able to let go and just keep kind of, I guess, um, what's the word? Just circling back, I guess, and
Hmm.
are just not ready to cross that bridge.
Yeah. No, and yeah, I resonate with that a lot. And yeah, I don't pretend to have the answers at all. So because I'm still learning about
Mhm.
what is that going to be like when we're on the other side. But going back to our conversation that night, not only did we feel your grandmother's presence, but we also felt like we channeled Mikey's energy again. And what really stuck out to you, like what are some things you remember from that conversation we had that really stick out to you?
Am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Yes, that is allowed. I'll put a warning. I'll put like explicit warning. Will be my first one, so you should feel honored. But yes, cursing is allowed as long as it's in the intention of
It's a
self-expression.
direct quote.
Yes,
It's
especially when it's spirit, because he
yes.
did curse. So go ahead.
Mikey saying shut the fuck up.
Yeah, he said it to me, and for listeners, he said it very endearingly, like almost like Big Brother, kind of teasing me.
Mhm.
So he did. Yeah, it's funny because what I was getting from him was that he kept showing me himself wearing shorts, and Kat told me that he never wore shorts, right? when
No,
he,
he very much wore pants the entire time that I was with him. I ever saw him wear shorts one time, and that was during when we were preparing for a major hurricane. I believe it was Hurricane Irma back in 2017.
Mhm.
And to my brother-in-law, John, if you're listening, you'll know this moment. The two of you were together. You had come to my house to drop my mother off, and we gave you some wood to put on your windows to take back to your house. And I believe Mikey might have been wearing a pair of your gym shorts that were like super big on him. So they came like pretty much down to like past his knees and calves. That was the only time he ever wore shorts. Other than that, he always wore either trousers or slacks or jeans. Never wore shorts.
And you wanted him to wear shorts.
I did, yes.
Yeah. So he's showing me, I'm getting this image of Mikey wearing shorts, but I'm also getting this image of him wearing like a tight t-shirt with his belly showing. So I asked Kat, like, hey, did he wear was there something about his t-shirts? And I already had known that he loved wearing like his graphic tees, right? But but I told her, but they're like, did he wear shirts that were too small on him? And she said, you said, I think you said sometimes. And then we both kind of said at the same time, like his belly is showing a little bit. Cause I told you, like, yeah, he's showing me he's wearing shorts and a t-shirt that's small enough that his underbelly or the bottom of his belly is showing. And I felt like, and I think I made a comment on what he was wearing, like to you in our conversation. And that's when I heard him go, shut the fuck up. And I'm like, I had to interrupt you because you were talking about something. I said, Kat, I have to tell you, he just told me shut the fuck up. And it's really funny. We both laughed about it. You told me like, yep, that sounds like him.
Oh no, I'm sure he had said that many times before. I think I might have heard him say that a couple of times. Never to me or anything like that, but to other people. But yeah, he definitely would say something like that. Something snarky. That was just him.
Yeah, and for those that are listening, it's not like the way I took that is not like him literally telling me to shut the F up. It's more just like he is trying to convey the energy that in spirit that he had in the physical world to help us like feel to feel some confirmation that this is actually him. So that's how I took that beautiful message he had for me. Which was really funny. I laughed about it. I thought it was so funny. But what's interesting is before we hopped on that FaceTime call to do that second practice session we're talking about right now, I usually like to meditate before I hop on a practice session with somebody, or before I do like a tarot reading for somebody or for a group of people. And during my meditation, I saw the image of you on FaceTime, like in my mind's eye, and I saw Mikey standing behind you on your left side. But he looked taller, which is very interesting. Like he looked like a tall energy. And when I told you that, you want to share like how you related to that when I told you about him standing on your left side?
So the many times that we hung out, whether it was at my house or his house, well, naturally, as any couple would, we would always cuddle. And of course, he was the big spoon. A little spoon, despite the fact that he was shorter than me. I mean, there was one time where we did try the opposite and it felt wrong, so we never did that again. But the way that we would lay down, though, I would be laying on my right side so that my left side was exposed, like my left shoulder, my left, hip and all that. And the way that he was the big spoon behind me, it just sort of like, he could like nestle in perfectly. And I mean, for those that are listening, you can't obviously see, but try to imagine that you're laying on your right side and he was able to rest his head on my left shoulder. So he was behind me, but I could feel him like on my left side.
Yeah. And I find, thank you for sharing that. And I find that so interesting that when I tell you that I see him in my mind's eye, standing, like you're sitting on it. I saw you sitting on your bed or a chair on FaceTime in my head before we hopped on. And I saw him on your left side behind you. And the way you related to that was thinking about the times you were like very physically close to each other. Like that's just really interesting. And we're going to wrap this up really soon. But like something that I mentioned in that call also was like shoes or an obsession with shoes. And I mentioned this because like, yeah, I think you told me he never was without wearing shoes. Like you would never see him like open-toed shoes. It was always closed shoes, sneakers, right?
Correct. He he'd always would wear like either like dress shoes, but like he's gonna go somewhere nice, or just regular sneakers. Or if we were like at my house or his house, he would wear socks. He was never one to be barefoot unless he was going to go take a shower. But it always bothered me that he would never be barefoot because I'm the opposite. I don't like wearing shoes. I could, if I could, I would like to be barefoot all the time, but that's not realistic. But pretty much that always bugged me. And that was just one of like the fun things that we would argue about.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I got shoes in my head, and I had already known that based on a previous conversation we had, but he made me keep thinking about like it's something about his sneakers or his shoes, or someone's obsessed with shoes, and we didn't have the answer for it. So for listeners, sometimes that will happen where you get a symbol and there's just no like way of having closure about a symbol. Like we just don't know what it means. And maybe it's something I get from something else or some random thought I have, but just let it be. And maybe something will come up later. And then it's like, oh wait, Mikey said shoes through Juan. And maybe he wanted me to look out for shoes. I don't know. But yeah, it was a really amazing conversation we had that night. And the last question I'd like to ask you is, why has it been important for you to share these experiences with me, with Spirit?
It's been important because this whole experience, whether I wanted it to happen or not, changed me as a person. But I feel like in a way it's changed me for the better in the sense that I've become more resilient, more positive, more joyful. But also it showed me that even when our loved ones are not here physically, they're always with us spiritually and in our hearts as well. And for someone like me who only got to know Mikey for 3 years and I expected to spend the rest of my life with him, I didn't get that. I felt like I was robbed. But through these experiences, I feel like he's still here. And it just tells me that he'll always be near me and get to be in my life, but maybe not in the way that I had previously imagined and planned.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Um, I think that your openness to messages and to signs from Spirit and from Mikey, you're the other end of that phenomena. Like it's like I think if you weren't open to the signs and symbols and messages, they wouldn't quite resonate with you the way they did. And honestly, the birds flying near your car and the feather just blow my mind. And I'm a very skeptical believer, even with the things that I experience that I share about here on this podcast. I'm very skeptical, and I'm very quick to doubt things. But that's something, I don't know if I could make that up. And that's something I definitely attribute to Mikey, and I commend Mikey and Spirit just so much for letting those experiences happen.
And actually, I wanted to say one more thing. This is kind of unrelated, but actually, I'm wearing his hoodie, and I didn't even plan that.
You didn't? Really?
No, because I went to grab a sweater from my closet today, and I thought, oh, I want to wear that today, and I didn't click that. Oh yeah, today's the podcast with Juan. So this was Michael's hoodie. I had stolen it from him when we first started dating.
Oh
I still keep it.
Oh my goodness, that's so cool. And wait, is the lining yellow?
Yes, it is.
You remember the color yellow came up in our conversation, and I told you.
I do. Yes.
Oh my goodness, and I'm
yeah, this is actually his Batman hoodie.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, the last thing I'll say to listeners is the color yellow came up for Catherine during that second practice session with her. And she told me that, Hufflepuff is her favorite Harry Potter house, and that's yellow. And I told her, I think yellow is a good color for you in terms of like reminding you to take care of your self-esteem and your solar plexus chakra, which is the self-esteem chakra, and like your confidence chakra. So the fact that this sweater is lined in yellow, of course it's Batman, but number one, you didn't think it was Mikey's sweater when you put it on, and it's lined in yellow. So you know what? Thanks, Mikey. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. Kat appreciates that.
Yes. Thank you, sweetie.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to end our conversation by, I want to thank you. I want to thank your loved ones for helping to make this conversation happen, your loved ones in spirit. I want to thank Mikey. I want to thank Spirit. And I'm going to say triple, quadruple, thank you, Kat, so much for being so open to have this conversation, for letting others listen into it.
Of course. And thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be your first interview.
Yes, you're my first interview. I'm so excited, and thank you for being part of my podcast launch, which you are. So
Oh,
thank
you're
you
most
so
welcome.
much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.